Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we're going to start taking a look at triggers. So this video is going to cover the so-called after triggers, and in the next video, we're going to take a look at instead of triggers. What are triggers? Triggers are a mechanism for the database to take an action once a particular command is run. Usually it responds to an insert, a delete, or an update event. So if I make a change to a table, let's say I update a particular table, I can have a trigger do something either to that table or to other tables. These triggers can be nested. In other words, you can have a trigger on one table, an event on one table to cause a trigger to fire another table, which itself can cause another trigger to fire on a different table, so on and so forth, up to 32 levels deep, although I certainly don't recommend that. In general, it's a good idea not to use triggers if you don't have to. So if there are other mechanisms to handle a particular functionality or process that you want, you should go with them instead of triggers. Nevertheless, they do have their place, and we want to take a look at how we create one of those. So let's go ahead and get started. To begin with, we're going to create what's called an after trigger, which happens after an update or an insert or delete runs. To create a trigger, we type in create trigger. Doesn't have to be uppercase. SQL Server is not case sensitive, but by default, we usually do it like that. And then we give it a name. Now, this could get a schema as, for instance, our default schema is DBO, but you don't have to. If you don't, it will put it in the default schema. I'm going to call this update books. Then the next thing that comes in is this trigger is running on which table? Well, it's running on DBO.publisher in my case. And then you type in after update. So after the event that you're interested in, is it update, delete, or insert? And then the as keyword, begin and end. And then the body of the trigger is inside here. Let's understand what we want to do. What I want to do is to make sure that whenever a publisher's ID is changed, that the corresponding publisher ID in the books table, all of those are also changed. Now, you might be saying to yourself, listen, you can do that with a cascade, and you're absolutely correct, and that's the way I would normally do it. But this is just to illustrate the concept of a trigger. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. We can declare variables, and if you remember from the stored procedure module, variables in SQL Server get an @ sign. So I'm going to have add new publisher ID as integer and declare add old publisher ID as integer. I had already looked up the publisher ID, and I knew that the type was an integer right here. Okay, so we have two variables that we can keep track of things. Then I'm going to select, and again, you may recall from these stored procedures that you can select something like pub ID, but you can assign it to something by doing it this way. So I'm going to say at new publisher ID equals pub ID from inserted. Recall that we have these two little tables, temporary tables that SQL Server gives us called inserted and deleted. Remember that this is a trigger that runs after an update, but what is an update? An update is a delete followed by an insert. That's what an update is. So when we run the update on the publisher table, we will be inserting a new pub ID that will also be stored in this inserted table. I can basically fetch that, and that's the pub ID that gets inserted, and I can assign that to this variable so I can keep track of it. At the same time, I want the old pub ID. So I'm going to say add old publisher ID is equal to pub ID. But this one is from deleted. So this is the old one. When the old one gets deleted, it gets dumped into that. So I have those two. Now I'm going to use an if statement. I'm going to say if add new publisher ID is not equal to 0. So in fact, something did happen because publisher IDs are 1 and higher, they're not 0. What I'm going to do is I'm going to also update the books table, setting the pub IDs equal to add new publisher ID, where the pub ID is equal to the add old publisher ID. And that takes care of our trigger for running after an update to the publisher table. Let's execute this and see it be created. And let's execute that. There we go. Okay. So apparently I ran this more than once and it's already in there, but it's okay if, let me go ahead and drop it and then I'll execute it again. There we go. That's done, and then I'm going to run my create trigger statement. There we go. So you should get a commands completed successfully. Does it work? So I have a little bit of code written over here. Select everything from publisher. Let's execute that and see the current publishers. So we see that we have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 publisher IDs, and let's select asterisk or everything from books. And we can see that those are the numbers, various publishers. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to update publisher. Let's take a look at publisher again. I'm going to set the publisher ID equal to, let's say, 8, where the publisher ID currently is 5. So read and write, I'm going to change that publisher ID. Let's do and execution here. Highlight it and execute this. And let's go and first check out publisher. So this did change. Did books also change? Let's check it out. And I can see that I see those 3 that were read and write, the number 5 were also modified. This is how you do an after trigger. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks as always for being a great audience, and if you're enjoying these, please share with loved ones and friends and pass the word. I'll see you in the next one where we discuss instead of triggers.